So, this book has a reputation of being exceptionally bad. Many call Chicken Chicken the worst Goosebumps book ever. A lot of places that review these books, most famously the Blogger Beware Project, give it their bottom score, 0 out of 10, F-, the worst of the worst. People in my comments expressing their dread over me having to read this one. Yeah, no way this book was going to live up to that kind of hype. It's not good, don't get me wrong. I'm not about to argue that Chicken Chicken is a secret masterpiece, but it's not the worst of the series. It's not throw it at the wall bad, and it's not crappy in any unique way for this series. Granted, I might be a bit kinder to this book than I normally would be because it's hands down the most relatable book in the series to my personal life experiences. Our protagonist this time around is Crystal, and she lives with her parents and younger brother Cole in a small chicken farm in a super tiny town called Goshen Falls, which only has a handful of blocks, one grocery store, and lots of empty fields. Her parents moved the family there in an attempt to get away from that dirty, sinful city living. But Crystal hates it here. She hates how there's nothing to do but feed chickens and wait for the semi-regular community barbecue. This was my childhood, straight up. I too was moved to a tiny nowhere town in my parents' attempts to get away from the big cities. The book takes place in Ohio and I was living in Utah, but Stein's description here may as well have been where I spent my elementary school days. And we had a plot of land and kept chickens. Like Crystal, feeding and wrangling chickens was part of my daily chores. By sheer coincidence, I found myself empathizing with Crystal over most every other Goosebumps protagonist, and I find myself in a nostalgic place through most of this reading. I think Stein might have approached this from a place of nostalgia as well. He did grow up in Ohio, and one interesting detail is the town's grocery store, Pick and Pay, which was the name of a real Ohio-exclusive supermarket chain that was bought out in the late 70s, decades before this book came out. Kids in 1997 wouldn't have picked up on that, so I think it's just a little treat for the author. There is one denizen of Goshen Falls that stands out, Vanessa, a mysterious woman who dresses all in black, lives alone except for her black cat, and is rumored to be a witch, casting spells on naughty children who antagonize her. Not that that seems to stop the children from antagonizing her. The book opens with Crystal stumbling on Cole and some of his friends trying to prank Vanessa by pouring water into her mailbox. Huh? Okay, I had to read this over a few times. It's not entirely clear, but I guess her mailbox tilts back at an angle because Vanessa is basically a Tim Burton character. Anyway, it's a weird prank, and Vanessa jumps out and yells at them and the kids scatter. That's all set up. The actual plot kicks off when Crystal, Cole, and Cole's friend Anthony are walking around the few stores this town has, looking for a birthday present for Crystal's friend Lucy Ann. Cole and Anthony start playing catch with an egg. The egg breaks, and everyone acts so surprised, and then a fight breaks out between the three kids in front of the grocery store, just as Vanessa is walking out. They knock over her groceries, bottles shatter, eggs break, it's a real mess. Anthony yells sorry and runs away, but Crystal and Cole are frozen in fear. I turned to Vanessa and nearly gasped when I saw the look of fury on her cold, pale face. As her eyes locked on mine, I felt as if I'd been stabbed by an icicle. A shiver of fear made me take a step back. I grabbed Cole's arm. I started to pull him away, but Vanessa stepped forward, her long black dress sweeping along the sidewalk. She pointed to Cole with a slender finger tipped in black nail polish. Then she pointed at me. "Chicken, chicken," she whispered. So today, R.L. Stine is riffing on Stephen King's Thinner, just without the racist Romani curse stuff. So kudos to Stine, I guess. The siblings run home, and at first, nothing happens. But then, a day later, during their choir practice at school, Cole starts clucking like a chicken during his big solo. Then, at Lucy Ann's birthday party, Crystal's lips start to rapidly dry out and chap, and then harden into a beak-like material that clicks every time she talks. Rushing home, she finds that Cole has started growing feathers. I reached out and plucked a white feather from the back of his neck. I expected the fake feather to slide off easily, but my brother's hand shot up. "Ouch!" he screamed. The tip of the feather left a small hole in his skin. I grabbed a big feather on his shoulder and pulled it. "Hey, careful!" Cole cried, moving away from me. "Buck? That really hurts." "Oh no," I gasped. "They're real. You're really growing," click click, "feathers." This is easily the book's best element. There is some solid body horror going on here as these kids gradually transform into chickens, like a slow-motion Animorphs cover. While less applicable to puberty metaphors, I think it's a scarier version of slowly turning into an animal than My Hairiest Adventure had. Yeah, turning into a dog is weird and frightening, but except for the tail, there's clear parallels between human and dog anatomy. A chicken may as well be an alien monster, with its feathers, beak, wings, and talons. Turning into a chicken is an othering that turning into a dog really isn't. There's a lot about this book that doesn't work, and we're about to get to its biggest sin, but for once the actual horror stuff in this children's horror series is on point. So you got these two kids turning into chickens, which is A, a very serious issue that needs to be addressed somehow, and B, is causing changes that are easily perceptible to the casual observer. You can't miss it. So with that in mind, what happens next is cluck wild. Crystal and Cole know they need to tell their parents what's going on, except they keep plucking and hiding away their feathers, which is the most obvious evidence of their condition. Okay, so they're trying to hide their condition, right? Except once they're done plucking and hiding the feathers, they go straight to their mother and tell her what's happening. So why did they pluck the feathers? Okay, well, there's no feathers, but Crystal's mouth is basically a beak by this point. They're shrinking a bit, they're clucking about. Mom is still going to notice that something's up, right? No! Despite obvious physical evidence right in front of her face, she dismisses her two children in a very weird, "it's not real if I don't acknowledge it" kind of way. "Block?" Cole exclaimed. "Listen to me, Mom," I begged. "Do you hear Cole clucking like that?" "Yes, very nice clucking," she murmured, tossing a chicken leg into the bowl. "Do you see my lips?" I demanded. "Vanessa is doing this to us. We bumped Vanessa and spilled her groceries, so she is turning us into chickens." "Please, you two," Mom groaned. "Can't you see how frantic I am? I don't have time to..." She stopped when she glimpsed my lips. Yuck, those are really chapped. It's obvious that Stein wrote himself into a corner here. Most Goosebumps stories don't work if the adult believes the child, because adults can take actions children can't. If Crystal and Cole's parents believe that their children have been supernaturally harmed by Vanessa, it's likely they would go to Vanessa's house with a couple of baseball bats or something. This is why, in most Goosebumps stories, the children don't have any solid evidence of what's going on. But in this book, they very clearly do. So to maintain this clueless parent dynamic, Stein has to have his young characters hide the most obvious evidence, namely the feathers, even though the kids want their parents to believe them. Except that's pointless because there's still a bunch of very obvious changes to their body, so the parents still have to ignore what's right in front of their face. If Mom doesn't care about Crystal's beak, why would she care about the feathers? These characters don't make any sense. Now, there's a clear and simple solution to this, but let's save that for the rewrite. The only course of action now for Crystal and Cole is to break into Vanessa's house and try to apologize. Oh, also there's this weird scene where they check out Anthony to see if he also got cursed, and it turns out Anthony's, become good at golf? I don't understand. Anyway, they go to Vanessa's house. She isn't home, so they slip inside to search for something that can help. They find a book called Chicken, 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 just assume it's a spell book, go all the way back home, only discover that it's a cookbook. So they have to go all the way back to Vanessa's place, break in a second time, find the actual book of spells. They try to reverse the magic, but instead go from being little chickens into big chickens. Vanessa finally shows up, laughing at the children's misfortune. She explains that she punished the kids not because they knocked over her groceries, but because they didn't apologize for knocking over her groceries. Anthony actually said sorry before he ran away like a little coward, which is why he was spared. Vanessa is all about manners. She has this entire bookshelf full of etiquette books. Crystal tries to say she's sorry, but now being full chicken, she can only communicate by hitting keys on a typewriter with her beak. Thank you for explaining to us, and thank you for trying to teach us to be polite. Yours truly, Cole and Crystal. I don't believe it, Vanessa exclaimed. She tore the sheet of paper from the typewriter and read it again. A thank you note, she cried. You wrote me a thank you note. She gazed down at Cole and me with a broad smile. No kids today ever write thank you notes, she cried. This is the politest thing I ever saw. This is enough to convince Vanessa to change the kids back. Hooray! And then Cole burps, so Vanessa turns him into a pig. The end. It's a very watered-down Roald Dahl, isn't it? A child brutalized because they didn't behave how the author thinks children should behave. Chewing gum is rude. Time to die. Goosebumps rarely moralizes on this level. These haven't been books about teaching kids lessons, so I guess Stein just had a bug up his butt that month about kids these days and how they don't write thank you notes. It's silly. I don't mind the idea by itself, but it's a tonal whiplash to the genuinely distressing body horror that came before it. Body horror that I think was really well done, and I think redeems this book at least a little bit. It's still a bad book in some very obvious ways, but I just can't get mad about it. And obvious problems means obvious fixes, so here's my one simple trick for the rewrite. Have Crystal and Cole do something actually bad to Vanessa. It is weird that Vanessa seems okay with kids pulling pranks on her. Okay enough that she doesn't curse the kids pouring water into her mailbox, but an honest accident is what sets her off. But what if Crystal and Cole tried to do a prank and it went too far? As far as Scholastic would allow anyway, so probably no physical harm against Vanessa or her cat, but perhaps the kids set a flaming poop bag on Vanessa's porch, but the flames catch on a bit of drapery, and before you know it, Vanessa's whole house is on fire. This is more than enough to catch the wrath of a witch, but most importantly, it gives Crystal and Cole a reason to hide their new chicken features from their parents. Because if their parents discover these feathers, they'll have to admit to this awful thing they did. So, pluck all the feathers, wear a scarf to hide the beak, do the best you can to not cluck around mom and dad, because if they find out we accidentally burnt down a house, we're gonna be in so much trouble. You add this tension of, will they get caught, on top of all the body horror. The moral of the story shifts away from, oh, kids these days with their baggy pants and their loud music, and instead becomes a story about taking responsibility for your actions. The only way to save themselves from turning into chickens is to admit what they did, apologize to Vanessa, and face whatever punishment comes their way. It's a far more genuine and important moral for young people to learn than, say bless you when someone sneezes. This one change, and everything about this book clicks into place. As it is, Chicken Chicken has some good qualities, and it has some decent horror. I personally like the setting. Crystal and Cole aren't annoying like many Goosebumps protagonists end up being. I've definitely read worse in this series. But yeah, the story requires characters behave in weird, contradictory ways, and the moral belongs in a book for preschoolers, not 5th graders. You win some, you lose some. I give Chicken Chicken a Nintendo 64 controller with a broken thumbstick out of 10.